what you're saying is flipping the paradigm. Right now, most people who come to you are coming because they've given up on the medical treatments. They haven't stuck, they haven't worked, they've fallen between the cracks of the medical system. They're looking for answers, alternative answers. And you're saying, well, the medical would actually have a better probability of sticking, even, or may not be necessary if you flipped it. And instead of energy medicine being the end of the road, it was the precursor before you even went to see the doctor, or right when you start seeing it.
Absolutely. Like I would love it if people would come at the beginning of their journey rather than at the end. You're listening to Healing That Sticks, changing the paradigm around health and healing. I'm Amina Amir, a medical intuitive and energy healer. And with me is my partner, Chuck Crook. He is a therapist and a life force attunement practitioner, or I'm going to let him say more about that later.
Hey.
And at the moment, when medical practices are both politicized and emotionally fraught, we think that energy medicine is a cure. So our first episode, and you're going to excuse us as we learn how to do a podcast, but our first episode really is about why we started Healing That Sticks and why your chiropractor can't heal your shoulder or your neck or maybe your hip. Chuck and I came up with the idea of Healing That Sticks when we noticed that people with complicated and some or less complicated but health issues would end up on this hamster wheel. Like they would go around and around to one doctor or another doctor, they'd get surgeries, they'd do different things, and or get chemotherapy or get radiation or get one thing, and things might resolve for a little while, but they would always come back again or maybe get worse. And so that's how we decided, after our practice of working with different clients, we decided to start a practice called Healing That Sticks. So Chuck, isn't that what you noticed with your chronic pain clients?
Definitely. Yeah, the pain was debilitating. Most people gave up a lot of hope that they could get back the life that they wanted. The pain basically had shut down their hopes and their dreams. It was pretty devastating. And I had the shoulder pains, going to chiropractors, going to acupuncture, doing all that, and then you did the.
Just talk to me a little bit about what was a shoulder pain.
The shoulder pain was like just a chronic locking up. I said shoulder, but it was really here. And
like in your pecs or your neck?
Yeah, like a sort of here going sometimes into the shoulder, sometimes more here, down lower, but it stayed here. And, I do hot yoga like 2 or 3 days a week. And I could go to the yoga and get a little relief, loosen things up in there a little bit, go to chiropractor, get a little adjustment or two, feel good for a few days, but it always came back. That's why it's chronic.
I remember, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that it got really bad when you started working out with a trainer. You were working out with weights. Is that correct?
That was too much. I couldn't handle he was a bodybuilder type who like hooked me up to like this weighted sled thing and had me going down the sand on the beach, pulling this like heavy weighted sled behind me. It was honestly, I could do it in the moment, but God, the next day, I was just locked down. Like I had to quit.
So what was your first person that you went to see in that process? It was an acupuncturist or?
I found a guy through a client that had some benefit from a guy who's like a neurochiropractor. She explained that it was different because he was doing adjustments that weren't just physical adjustments, move your arm this way and do this and tap here. And then he put me on a table with a compression machine that stretched out, your neck and hydrated in there. And that was good for a while. That actually gave me a lot.
That would feel great.
Yeah, that was getting hydrated in those discs was really helpful. But it came back. It went away maybe for like a couple months and then it came back.
And then you went to an acupuncturist.
Acupuncturist, sort of, some more chiropractor. I would go back to him, get another job. I was in these packages. Everybody who's got a chiropractor probably hates those damn packages. You have to go every week, and they're like, "Yeah, you got to come every week, and you got to sign another package." And I was just like, I did it because I thought it was going to work, but it didn't work, and it's
Right.
expensive.
And then we started doing sessions together of like releasing old stories and old emotions and trauma and stuff that were stuck in that shoulder. And did you notice like an immediate release after that?
I did. I mean, I literally, after it left, the pain left. I was like, "Whoa, I got all this like motion, like a full restoration of the range of motion that when you have chronic pain, you get used to it and you live with it and your body kind of compensates for it and you kind of walk around like whatever your body's mangled sort of, but you just deal with it because that's what you got. But after that release, everything went back to normal. I was like, damn, it's been years since that shoulder was like completely normal, like the full range, go to yoga, do no problem, lifting weights again, no problem. Yeah, just like honestly a miracle. That's what I felt
Yeah,
like.
and I think I do feel like there was more than one session. I could be wrong, but I feel like there were a couple of sessions. But what we found out, I think, was that there were funny old stories stuck in your shoulder that had been there for a while, like for, some stuff from like really early childhood, some stuff that was relatively recent that had been stuck there for a while. And once we were able to release those things, that like allowed whatever healing process that you had done, let's say with a chiropractor, because chiropractors are great and acupuncturists are great and they can make such a big difference, but they allowed that stuff to stick.
Yes, the awareness. I'll tell you one thing. After that healing, I was like holding on to that for dear life. I was like, is this a gimmick? Is this like, okay, this was good for a couple of days? I was sort of in my mind expecting, nothing stuck, nothing sticks over the 5 years or whatever. So I kind of like, but then a week went by, another week went by, a month went by, and I was like, my mind forgot that I ever had it. And I stopped second guessing the healing. You know, I just was living my life without any memory that I had ever had the problem. And yeah, you sent me a list after you cleared it. You sent like a list of I think right after you did the sessions, you would send me a list. Like we did this, we cleared that, we cleared this. You had a whole list of the things that were trapped that you cleared. And, I was
My
like,
horrible
okay,
handwriting.
yeah.
It's interesting because I find so often, and I know you do this probably as well, that when you're working with a client, for a while, you might be working with one issue with them, and then as it resolves itself and you move on to another issue, you'll say something about like, well, that thing in your left knee, and they don't remember that it used to be an issue. Like you have to go back and remind them, and you're like, yeah, we worked on that for a while. Like that it disappears from your consciousness when it's no longer a problem.
What do you feel do you feel like it's like, I've heard people describe the energy as like it's like a dammed up energy system, like there's a dam and things can't move through the field of energy. It's stuck. Do you feel like, you clear one thing, one session, you loosen up everything in the dam, the twigs, the stones, whatever, the beaver dam, and then the next session, the stones are gone and most of the wood is gone, but there's a lot of old mud there. So is that what you're doing? Like each session you're clearing it so that the dam eventually just breaks?
Yeah, and what I notice is when I'm releasing things, or even when I'm seeing things as a medical intuitive, like sometimes someone might come to me and I'll do a read on them and they're like, yes, I have this terrible neck ache, but I actually came to see you because of some other health issue. And I'm like, yeah, because the body and the emotions show you the things that are on the top layer. So like you're saying, like the twigs, the things that you have to clear away. So it's almost like I have to deal with your neck first or your other thing first. And I know you find that as well, that I have to deal with the top level of stuff and then I eventually get deeper. And that's why a lot of times people do one session and have an amazing result and they'll be like, oh my God, my thing is gone. I feel great. And then it will come back on maybe less, a little bit less than it was before, as it waits for me to, like, the fact that it was able to be gone in a single session helps a person know that that's working, that that energy work is working. But then they have to come back because it's telling you that there's still more stuff stuck underneath. Maybe it's not as maybe it's not causing as much pain as it was previously, but it's still there.
So
But and sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, so you're saying that you don't, there's not a one size fits all session. It's like each person's emotional body, mental body, physical body, spiritual body has a script, if you will, for what it wants you to clear that session.
Right, right. Each person, and even if, like, I've heard other kinds of energy healers describe this before as well, that like it's like an onion, right? Like the problem's at the bottom, so you have to keep going through the different layers of the onion. And I also notice a lot of times, because I'm clearing very specific things, sometimes things that I see in my mind's eye when I do a session with someone, I'll be like, oh, this and this. But sometimes the things that I see in my mind's eye, like I'll say, oh, you fell down some stairs when you were 3 years old, and that's connected to your back. But I might do a session and I might not even get to that place when the person was 3 until I've done
Even though
multiple sessions.
you saw that
Right,
was something that happened, that may not be the agenda for that session.
right. It may not be what their body or their subconscious mind, or as you said, their emotional body or their various that layers of their body may not be willing to deal with that one yet.
How does that work in terms of when you say willing to deal with that yet? You mean like their ego is holding them back from releasing it, or
I
how would
don't
you?
know if it's the ego or if it's that the process of releasing emotions and stuck energy requires a lot of work. And I notice that after a session, and I think you have the same thing, because a lot of times when there's stuff for me that I can't move, I can't move for the other, or I can't help. I'm not really moving it. They're moving it, but I can't help someone move it. That if they then if they do a session with me and then they get stuck at a certain point, I can often send them to you because I'm taking out one very specific thing at a time, whereas you work with the whole energy field at one time. But I notice, so I'm going to go back to your question. What I notice is that the process of releasing the old emotion and the old story, the old energy is actually a process. And so it takes time. People get really tired. I notice after a session, I don't know if that is the same with you, but they get tired. They have to take a nap or they have to drink a ton of water. They have crazy dreams. They might feel really grumpy, or very sensitive or very irritable. We don't really, or things might throw them off, or maybe their balance goes off or whatever. But I notice that it requires work to release stuff. And sometimes whether I always call it the body or the subconscious mind, and I know you have more, you break things down a little bit more specifically, but I notice that process requires work. And so there's so much that we can process at a time. And that's why I think you can't just take everything away all at once. I mean, Jesus Christ could, but I
Mhm.
can't.
But humans not yet able to. That's helpful. Um, I mean, we had the one client we worked on who had the teeth, the pain was in the teeth, right? So
Right.
for me, it was the shoulder. For somebody else, it's in the teeth. But it's not where the pain is located. It's not about what on the outer level shows up, just the physical level of what shows up. That's what we're saying is the energy system is really what we're treating. You go to the doctor because you broke your thumb. We're not treating a broken thumb. We're treating that the healing will help the thumb heal, but the system, we're dealing with things that are a little bit more complicated than a broken bone because it goes back throughout their life what created the problem in my shoulder or the problem in the person's teeth or whatever it may be.
Yeah. And everybody, I mean, of course, you still need to go to a doctor. If you break your arm, you don't necessarily want to go to an energy healer or a homeopath. They probably will help you. They'll help the healing process, or let's say you get, I don't know, lose a finger or whatever. But but when you get the energy right and get it cleared, then your physical process with your doctor or whoever, your surgeon or whoever else you see, will be more effective. It will kind of stick. And it will allow that healing to stick. And then the second part of that is when I'm talking about changing health and healing, what I would love to see is that when you have a health issue, obviously not the kind that requires you to go into the ER, but when you have a health issue, that rather than starting by going to a doctor a surgeon or whatever, starting with very invasive kind of treatments with the body, that maybe you start with the energy. And so when you change the energy or you release old stories or old emotions and stuff, and when you change that energy, you can then you notice, then it'll be easier to see because your body is designed to heal itself. So then it'll be easier to see what actually requires some kind of physical intervention and what really doesn't. And there's so many things that actually don't require any physical intervention. You have a headache, you might not necessarily need to ever take aspirin, or you might not necessarily ever need to require some, special migraine medication or whatever.
So
You might,
you're really
yeah.
so it sounds like what you're saying is flipping the paradigm. Like right now, most people who come to you are coming because they've given up on the medical treatments. They haven't stuck, they haven't worked, they've fallen between the cracks of the medical system. They're looking for answers, alternative answers. And you're saying, well, the medical would actually have a better probability of sticking even, or may not be necessary if you flipped it. And instead of energy medicine being the end of the road, it was the precursor before you even went to see the doctor, or right when you start seeing the doctor.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I would love it if people would come see me first at the beginning of their journey rather than at the end of their healing journey. Because not to say that you might not still need to see a doctor, or you might have a digestive issue that might require some sort of physical intervention, but that if you see me first, whatever medical thing you do next, whatever kind of medical or Western medicine kind of intervention you do next, will be more likely to work better and your body will respond better. Because in the end, at least my understanding is the body heals itself. So when you go to the doctor because you have a broken bone, the doctor, sets it, he puts it in a cast, he might tell you, give you some anti-inflammatories or something like that, or anti-pain things, but your body heals a bone. or you have a cold or a flu or whatever, your body heals the cold or the flu. There's nothing that they can do to intervene in that way. And the idea is to clear your energy so that your body can heal itself faster and better.
So does that mean the the body heal itself faster and better? So do you know like if you're looking up a map at the United States, do you just like that's my metaphor. So you've got fascia, you've got lymph, you've got all these systems in the body. So when you're working on someone, do you just see the United States, which is you've got the state of lymph, the state of fascia, the state of the gut, the microbiome, or do you see like a specific state? Do you see, oh, there's California, that's the gut, that's where this work is being done?
When I'm working, usually when I start with the read, I usually see like in my mind's eye a little picture of the whole body in front of me. And then if I was looking at a map of the US, it would have like some little light up things on it and be like, oh, look, Chicago's lighting up. Oh, look, Portland's lighting up. And then I might say, so I usually don't break it down, though it's an interesting idea that maybe I should also look at and write some notes on. But it's an interesting idea that it shows up for me. And then I'm like, okay, Portland, you're lighting up. What's happening in Portland? Like, why are you lighting up? And then I'm like, oh, Portland or your throat chakra, let's say, feels like I was like, when I see your body, what it shows me, and often I see like a metaphor, it might show me like hands around your neck. And I'm like, oh, are you having a hard time? Is somebody stopping you from saying what you need to say? Or is somebody cutting off your oxygen? Or are you cutting off your oxygen, or your breath to speak? All of those. So I tend to see things a little bit metaphorically as well as physically.
So you are getting almost like clues as to what it is that that is needing to be cleared.
Right. So
And you're
if we
putting
take
those,
it back,
yeah.
if we take it back to your shoulder,
Mhm.
like talk to me like what you learned about that experience, like how that changed how you thought about health and healing.
Well, I'd had Reiki was my first, I guess, because like I don't think I'd had quote unquote energy healing before. I've done
Mm.
meditation for like over 20 years, 25 years. So, and I've felt energy come into my body and really rearrange the furniture in a dramatically positive way where I felt different in my body, but it wasn't addressing a specific issue. And I do meditate still every day. I have my whole life. That didn't take care of the shoulder pain. Even though energy work was being done in my body, it wasn't energy work like you and I are talking about it.
It wasn't connected to a specific body part, let's
Right,
say,
right. Um,
which is, I think,
so
the difference between like medical intuition and and working with the larger energy body.
yes, yes. Um,
Though,
so Reiki was my first experience with it, and I honestly it was nice, but I didn't feel this was prior to the shoulder. That was my first experience of energy work to try Reiki, and I knew my field was discordant, and I knew I needed the work, and I kind of like it was almost like I fell asleep during the session. I was in a very deep state, extremely deep state, and I came and so I kind of just went out, almost like you're on a massage table, how you just kind of go out, like in a good way. And then after the session, I definitely I noticed a huge difference. I noticed that I was more grounded, more balanced, um, I didn't feel like I was sort of had a brain fog anymore. I didn't feel like, anyway, there wasn't a specific health issue I was dealing with, but I just felt better. But it wasn't enough of a dramatic result that I would like continue with. It was like, okay, that was nice. Like a massage is
Right.
nice. Even a great cranial sacral is nice, but it's not what we're talking about. Once you, like when you did the healing work on the shoulder, I didn't have any of those experiences of like, okay, I'm on the massage table and I'm want to go to sleep or any of that stuff. For me, it was like I didn't even know you were working on me. I didn't even feel anything. I didn't know you. I I didn't know what I didn't know there was any difference between me sitting here and you talking now and you doing the work. And then I don't know if it was that day right after the session or the next morning, but that's when the pain was gone. Okay. So it was pretty quick. I think, as you said, I think the first time you did it, it felt like gone, but it
It
took,
kind of crept back.
it kind of crept back a little bit. I think I went back to you and I said, hey, it's not as bad as it was, but it's still here. And then after that next session, same thing. Didn't know you were working on me, didn't know what you did, didn't feel like any big deal. Gone, gone, gone. So now it's been 3 years.
That's pretty
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty. And I don't have any, I honestly like sometimes it'll creep in and I'll say to myself, man, I shouldn't be sitting at the desk for such a long number of hours at the computer at work today because that pain might come back. But it never does. Even if I get pain somewhere else from
Oh,
sitting at the
interesting.
desk too long,
Yeah.
it never comes back. When you healed that, that was that.
And I think that's the whole goal of healing that sticks.
Yeah, it is. It is. I'm still grateful. I was like, I don't know what I could say. It's like, wow, still, still wow.